Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week here on the Coast Sports Digital Network and 1029 The Game. So glad everybody can be with us. I'm Lloyd Vance, veteran insider and writer, and I got my guy back, Kevin Midgette. How you doing, bro?
Glad to be here, up and running. Let's do this.
Yeah, and Kevin's a lot happier than a lot of these guys around the National Football League that are getting their pink slips because tomorrow, Tuesday, uh, August 26th, 4 p.m. Eastern. That is the official date for all teams to get down from 90 to 53 guys. And the Turk is walking around all these camps. Kevin, I mean, I can't even keep up with my notifications on my phone, all these guys. It used to be just one, what, three cut down days. It used to go from like 90 to 75, then to like 60, then finally to 53. But now it's just one big cut. And unfortunately, a lot of these guys, their dreams are kind of like, okay. And like Buddy Ryan once told a guy I knew, it's time for you to get on your life work, son. you know, and it's tough to hear that, but there's only so many jobs to go around. And some of the names that we're seeing, and not surprisingly, one of the ones I saw from the Philadelphia Eagles was DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson, quarterback that did not play very well the last preseason game, as we were saying. Uh, he got his walking papers. Kenyon Green, guard that was kind of struggling for the Eagles, he got his walking papers. Dallas got rid of Lyle Collins, kind of a disappointment lineman they brought back, and just goes on and on. So, Kevin, do you like when you watch Hard Knocks or not watch it? Do you even care about these cuts? I mean, how should fans feel about cut day around the NFL?
Well, the grown up in me will say one thing. It's like we have to realize that these are human beings who are doing their life's work. All they want to do is play in the NFL, and it's shattered. They're just, once again, dream busters is what's going to happen tomorrow. That being said, yeah, most of them I don't care about. I mean, they're going to go on. They're going to live great lives, have great families. I hope the best for them. But when it comes to your football team that you root for, the sport that you follow, they're just not good enough. I'd love to play in the NFL. I'm sure everyone else would love to play in the NFL. You know what? Once again, there's only so many jobs, and there's a talent level you have to have. So lucky for them, though, there's all these leagues all around the world and the country, and if they want to, they can keep playing and try to get better. But for the better of the league, yeah, it has to happen.
Yeah, and Kevin, maybe they can hope to be, like Kurt Warner. He was a guy that got cut by the Packers, and he goes to the indoor league and the World League, and then he got his opportunity again. But it is very difficult, and the big thing is now teams in particular I see a lot, and we talked about this around the draft. They're mining the SEC mostly for players. I mean, their pro style system set up in Alabama and LSU and all these other schools, Georgia, and they've got these guys ready. And a lot of these coaches are former NFL guys, so they can just basically slide them along in the farm system right into the National Football League. And some of these other guys that are undrafted free agents or we're not seeing a lot of these small school guys like we used to back in the day, getting a chance. Think of like Billy White Shoes Johnson. I know I'm going way back, but he goes from Widener University, a Division three school, and he made an NFL roster, and then he's a borderline Hall of Famer. So, you know, is there still hope out there for kids that are not five-star guys and going to Alabama and all these other big schools, or how do you think it's going to work?
I mean, the deck is definitely stacked against them, and it's like they are. It's the power conferences. You go Big 10, you go SEC, and the other conferences to an extent. I mean, it's hard to bust through that, man. Because even if you're just a little bit better than those guys, they're going to get the draft pick. They're going to get the guy. They're going to be the guys who are brought in because of where they went, the systems that they ran under. They're already off and running, or the other guys are running like wishbone offenses and everything else in their small colleges.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys, you're right. They may be competing and looking good in camp against a bonus baby, first or second rounder, but in the end, you always got to follow the money. And teams do not want to wipe egg off their face and say, "Oh, we got it wrong." The thing about the Eagles, how long it took them to say Danny Watkins, a lineman that they drafted in the first round from Baylor, just couldn't block anybody, or Jalen Rieger, how long did they keep him around because they knew, oh, we took this guy number one, we got to give him a chance, but he just wasn't good enough. So, you know, shattered dreams around the NFL. But the the fun thing is, Kevin, and I didn't watch a lot of these week 3 preseason games. We're getting closer. We're getting closer, man. About 10 days away. September 4th, the Philadelphia Eagles against the Dallas Cowboys, and everybody's getting excited about that. And the thing is, now we can start talking about the real games and stop talking about, all the drama and oh, what's going on here. But we'll clean up a couple news and notes, and our hold in holdout list got a little smaller today. Uh, Trey Hendrickson, they slid about $15 million forward, adding that to his base salary. So he's now up to about $15 million. And basically, it's a 1 year deal for Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. I watched a lot of them in the preseason. They need him because last year, 17 and a half sacks. I think the rest of the guys had 19 on that defense. It shows you his value. But they're a sieve. So talk a little about Trey Hendrickson. Um, did the Bengals do the right thing? Did it take too long? What are you thinking?
It took way too long to happen. I mean, what else could that guy have done to get paid what he should have been paid? Why drag him through all of that when you knew you were going to have to do it at the end of the day anyway? And that's once again proof of the Cincinnati Bengals organization and how they run things there. They can't help themselves being them. I think it's one of those things also is that say he hangs those numbers again, we're going through this whole thing again. We're going to go through a whole ugly situation scenario when he's out the door anyway. So if you're going to pay him for this year, are you just hoping to catch, a lightning in a bottle and win a Super Bowl this year, or are you trying to win for the long term? And I don't think Cincinnati has the clarity to look that far ahead.
Yeah, and his agent Harold Lewis, kudos to him. He got it done, but it's just tough negotiating with Duke Tobin, their general manager, Mike Brown, their owner. They just their purse strings are tight, man. They did pay Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and there just does not seem to be a lot left for the rest of the guys. And let's face it, Cincinnati is a small market, and they just they just want to keep it that way. And he does not have that ownership FU type money where he can say, okay, let me give guaranteed contracts and high signing bonuses. So you're right. We may be talking about this again where they franchise them and next thing you know, it's all over again. But I think to Hendrickson's credit, maybe he had the wording in that contract where it says, all right, I'll give you this 1 year, but then I'm out of here. And then next thing you know, he'll probably end up with the Rams or one of these other teams, that has a lot of money. So we're talking holdouts here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette as always. And another one that came down, and we've been waiting for this one. Terry McLaurin gets his money. Another situation where, all right, Joshua Harris, Adams Peters, general manager, get this thing done. Terry McLaurin uh, did, it's a new thing, Kevin. He was in camp and in meetings, but he technically was holding out. They weren't paying him. But he gets a 3 year, $96 million contract, so that's 32 a year. Puts him right around Garrett Wilson's mark, which is 32 and a half that he got from the Jets. Were you glad to see this one go away? I mean, what are you thinking in terms of Washington? Do they have enough time to get this thing together? Because week one's coming soon. They play the New York Giants at week one.
They should have had that one done also a long time before this even came to it. McLaurin, he's been incredible when he's been on the field, and there's no doubt him and Jaden Daniels have nice chemistry together and everything, and that's just continuing to grow. What you did was stunt that growth with a sophomore quarterback who they have more film of, and they're going to be scheming towards more. And one thing we always say, once somebody does their hold out, hold in, what are we going to see about week one, week two, week three? Strained hamstring. And look out for Terry McLaurin that he's not stretched out yet, and he's trying to gear it up for week one, and that could come back to bite him.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're going to have to get him ready in a quick hurry. And you're right. That team needs him. You and I last week looked at the personnel, and there's just not a lot. You're talking about Luke McCaffrey and some other guys that are, the second string receivers there. And yes, they have a dynamic rookie running back that's doing some good things. Austin Eckler there, but you know, Zach Zach Ertz at his age, how much can you count on him? So they brought Larry Tunsil in to shore up that line, and Jaden Daniels, obviously the most dynamic player coming out of last season, rookie of the year, but he needs his go-to guy. So good signing, got that done. It's like, yeah, finally, type of situation with Terry McLaurin. Uh, Last holdout, and well, James Cook got his deal done. I was just watching that on Hard Knocks. Same kind of thing. He went in, showed that goodwill. The Puglia family gave him that money. Brandon being a general manager, they got that done. They're another team. The Buffalo Bills, they need James Cook out there because really they just do not have a lot of playmakers. Have you been watching Hard Knocks and following this situation?
I kind of like to let them all build up and then just do a little binge watch. So, I haven't really gotten there yet. But with that James Cook signing, you know what it made Kevin do in his fantasy football money league? He drafted James Cook.
Oh,
Let's
there you
go.
go.
Let's get some. He's
Yeah,
happy.
yeah, he's RB1, man. They're paying him. They paid him like one, and I think he's getting about $12 million a year, and we'll see if he's able to live up to that. Last season, he got just over 1,000 yards or so. So they're looking for him to do a little bit more, and quite frankly, they're going to need him. They got Shakure, they got a couple good tight ends, but it's all built around Josh Allen, their quarterback, and James Cook there in Buffalo. Last holdout, and we got through them all. But this one, Micah Parsons still is unhappy, and I was thinking of you immediately. I'm watching this preseason game on NFL Network, and this guy's laying on a training table, yucking it up, acting like he doesn't give a damn, and he's sticking it right in Jerry Jones's face. Jerry Jones, saying he said, she said type situation with Micah Parsons and his agent David Muligata, and it's just getting ugly there in Dallas. It's looking more and more like it could be the same situation like Emmitt Smith back in the day, where Dallas had to hold out at 2 games into the season. They go in two, and then they finally pay him. But is Jerry Jones spiting his nose off to cut his face here?
Yes, that's what old people do, man. They dig in. They don't care. They're in it for the battle. Does he want to win? Sure, but it's about the battle within the game. Micah Parsons has zeros to give, man. He does not care what any of those guys think about him or anything. It's going to blow up in Dallas's face. We all know it is, and I'm here for it. Let's do that too. Gee, yeah, Dallas can't. They can't get out of their own way either.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I started looking at these situations, I'm like, all right, the players, they just don't have much leverage. And what really gets tough, since they've waived basically these $50 a day, missed camp fines, is game checks. And if a player's willing to miss game checks, that's going to show you like, okay, he's committed. But Parsons, they activated him basically, and he's going to be on a 53-man roster, but he's making it emphatic. He's not playing, and as you said, it's just becoming all drama in a circus. And the thing is, Jerry Jones loves it. He loves his Netflix series where he's pounding his chest about Dallas's glory days and all that stuff. He wants Dallas to be first and foremost. But if the season starts and they start piling up losses, it's going to get ugly. So they're at Philadelphia. New York Giants, they host week 2 at Chicago, Green Bay, at the Jets, at Carolina. So they have some winnable games. They have Washington week 7. So it's like who's going to blink first? And if their $63 million quarterback, Dak Prescott, does not play well, and that defense has kind of been a sieve lately. They lost Lawrence, who's with Seattle. And if they don't have Parsons, it could get ugly quick. So do you think it gets resolved by September 4th?
No, no, I don't. I think it drags into the season, and it becomes more of a nuisance and disturbance to that team than it should, and it's going to distract. Especially, I mean, the teams that you just mentioned, those first 6 games, they should probably and easily be 4-2, 3-3 worst. So, I mean, they should get out of the gate all right. But the thing is, they're just going to drag it out, and it's going to get ugly. And when he comes back, then how's that whole locker room going to be?
Right, right. And then with the holdouts, it's just like, all right, already, And I think a big thing is NFL younger guys need to understand the NFL is not basketball. You're not dictating the terms, holding a team hostage because owners and GMs they almost always have these guys under contract, and if you're under contract, they can tell you to go pound sand. And I talked about that $50,000 a day training camp fine and missed game checks because the money, unfortunately, in the NFL is not guaranteed. So I don't, I don't begrudge the guys because yeah, they should get paid, but there's just a way of going about doing business and fighting your boss. That's not a good way of doing it. So we're talking, and that wraps a bow up on holdouts, hold-ins here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. All right, Kevin, the other story that everybody's like, all right, just go away already from training camp, and I bet you can guess it. It's in Cleveland. Shador Sanders. I mean, I want, social media and all in the, talking head shows today. They were all saying, well, did they give him a fair chance? He was playing with a line that had four guys that were cut, etc. He goes 3 of 6, and if you add in the sacks, negative 27 yards, got sacked 5 times on 11 dropbacks in a 1917 win over the Rams. But to run a 2-minute drill, they put Tyler Huntley in to win the game, and they pulled Sanders, and he was upset about that and spoke his mind. So Shador is going to be the fourth quarterback, and is this much to do about nothing? I mean, the guy is a fifth-round draft pick, and we've been talking about it forever.
I think first and foremost, the kid's not ready. He's not ready. He might he be a good, decent quarterback down the road. There's a chance. Yeah, he's got some tools there. But if you're a fan of Shador Sanders, why would you want him out there to start the season? He's going to take hit after hit after hit. And the whole thing is that's going to go with Gabriel as well. You want Joe Flacco there in his 54-year-old body taking those hits. You want these kids to learn a little more before they get out there. You want them to grasp the offense more, when to get rid of the ball. And that's one of the reasons Joe Flacco's there and starting.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Kevin. They're both, Gabriel was a reach as a third rounder, and Shore as a fifth rounder. They're rookies. They're going to have highs and lows, and I think people are focusing way too much on this quarterback room. And let's face it, they're going to be a terrible team. When you look at their roster, other than Myles Garrett, there's just not a lot there. And we've spent almost an eternity talking about Sanders. Yes, I know his father's famous, and maybe he was more talented than being a fifth round pick, but he got selected, and that's where he ended up, and he's getting his opportunity. So, the tape is what it is. Now, the crazy thing is, Kevin, they're going to keep four quarterbacks, which I think is a luxury. You don't see that around the National Football League. I think the last time this was done was the Saints, and they had Taysom Hill, who was kind of a gadget guy, and he was used a variety of ways. What is Stefanski and Andrew Barry thinking here?
They're being Cleveland. That's what they're doing. That's why they're in the situation they're in right now. They're bad at football, the football decisions, football on the field. If you have a team that has that many pressing needs, now I'm going to hold on to four quarterbacks instead. Yeah, it's going to be a long time coming, Browns fans.
Yeah, and the roster is just depleted. So, if you keep them under 53, next thing you know, you don't have that extra gunner on the kick team and all kinds of stuff. So, cutting off their nose, spite their face, and then the depth chart ends up the way it started. Flacco start, Pickett will be the second, Gabriel third, Sanders four. So we'll see how that drama plays out. Got a nice comment here. Penguin Z, glad to hear from you again. Yeah, he was on board last season. Definitely, Kevin and I are extremely excited to talk about week one and real games and just the action on the field. And the Penguin AZ is a Packers fan, so I'll throw it over to Kevin. Jordan Love has a thumb injury on his non-throwing hand. everybody I've talked to said he's going to play. Is this going to be a big thing in terms of the Packers? The Packers, interesting game week one. Detroit is at Green Bay. The line is about 1.5, leaning towards the Packers. But we knew Detroit went there a couple years ago and won for the first time in forever.
I think Green Bay, Jordan Love will play the first week. I think that, I mean, it takes a lot for somebody not to play week one, that's for sure. Malik Willis, though, I will say, he looked all right. He looked all right. If he's your backup, do you want to roll him out there week one? Absolutely not. But he looks like he can actually play a little bit. So if you run into a situation where he has to, run the team a little bit, you'll be all right. I think for Green Bay, it's once again figuring out that wide receiver core. Who you going to? It's a different guy. They don't know who they're going to that day. Kraft at tight end actually is poised to break out, though. That could be one to look at.
Yeah. Kraft definitely is coming along at tight end. I thought he played well. He had Jacobs at the running back position. I thought that he revitalized career there in Green Bay, and they're going to feed him the football. One of the concerns I have though with the Packers is their receiving core is very beat up, and they have Golden coming in, who's a speedster from Texas. Also, they got Dobbs back this week, so they're going to need him out there. Their defense is sneaky underrated. They have some nice pieces there, so I think the Packers are going to be in the mix in the NFC North. Next week we will give our predictions. We're going to roll the tape. I'm going to put Kevin on the spot. I want to hear all his choices for MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Comeback Player. We got some breakout players, coaches, and then, as always, our favorite. Trying to figure out those 7 playoff teams in each conference. As we know, at least 4 teams have made it in that weren't there the previous year, and that's going back all the way to 1999. So, it's going to be fun to talk. So we'll roll those predictions out. I'll give Kevin a week to do his homework. We know how he is. He'll do his homework. He better not be working on his 11 fantasy football teams and trying to figure out which one's the highest payout and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. No doubt.
So we will talk about that next week. But yeah, definitely thanks for the question there. And Packers are going to be an interesting team to watch. One other, a bunch of other news and notes around the league. Washington, this was quick how this happened. And we talked with Matt Lombardo a couple weeks ago about the NFC East, and he was at Commanders camp. Brian Robinson Jr. gets traded. So Robinson is 6th rounder to the San Francisco 49ers for a 6th rounder as well. So Brian Robinson Jr. fell out of favor with the Commanders, and now he's going to be Christian McCaffrey's backup. Is this going to make a difference? I know my son Nate, he is all McCaffrey'd up. That was one of his picks. Talk about Brian Robinson Jr.
First of all, I know that was one of Nate's fantasy picks. Believe me, I heard about it and I told him he's done. So that being said, apparently the 49ers agree with me as well. I'm not saying the guy's done, but I mean, we've seen this movie. He's going to get hurt at some point, and when he gets hurt, it's usually for a period of time. So they made a proactive, start here. They got Brian Robinson Jr., who a lot of his value actually comes inside the 20-yard line in the red zone area. He has a nose for the goal line. He can get the ball in the end zone. I think that being said, it takes a hit for anyone. I'll throw fantasy out there who drafted Guerrero, the other San Francisco backup. He suddenly falls out of favor. And Washington's taking a big stab with their young running backs right now, an aging Austin Eckler and a young running back core. So you see if that backfires on them as well.
Yeah, and Washington, this Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, I mean, we talk about every year. There's somebody that breaks out in preseason, and everybody's all over them. I remember it was Victor Cruz a couple of years ago. I mean, he came out of nowhere from UMass, and next thing you know, he's catching all his long passes against the Jets in a preseason game. Everybody's talking about him. So this Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, is he the real deal? I mean, are they going to regret trading Robinson Jr. to San Francisco, or do you think he can come in there? They're saying Eckler's probably going to be the starter and catch more passes, but this young man has looked very good in preseason.
It's a hell of a gamble, to tell you what, with the season that they're looking forward to after going to an NFC Championship game in Jaden Daniels' first year. they're putting a lot of faith in the kid, and we're going to see whether or not he can do it or not. Because if you have to lean on Austin Eckler for extended carries over the course of a season, I don't know if he has enough rather left in the tank for it.
Yeah, and Austin Eckler, I'll tell you, I picked him up from my bench because it's a PPR league. I'm thinking he's catching a lot of short passes and stuff, but you're right. I think they are leaning toward Crossy Merritt being their guy, and it is a gamble because the NFC East is a veteran league division, and sometimes when you're not playing with the number twos and threes, you don't look as good. So we'll see how this young man comes along. Everybody's giving him, the acronym because his initials JCM.
Mhm.
But let's see if he can live up to that. The Eagles, and this one was crazy and there's another one I immediately thought of Kevin because the Vikings trade Sam Howell and a sixth rounder to Philadelphia for a fifth and a seventh. The fifth is in 2026, the seventh in 2027. So Sam Howell, a quarterback who led the NFL in interceptions when he started for the Commanders, he comes over from the Vikings. Is this a good move? And I'll before you comment, the Vikings decided, all right, Howell's out of town. Let's sign Carson Wentz and bring him back to the league, even though he is not played and he wasn't in training camp. It- and they got JJ McCarthy coming off a very bad knee injury. I mean, what are the Vikings doing here?
I mean, how he didn't look good at all in preseason. I get why. If you can get any value for that guy at all, I get it. Eagles are in a spot. DTR, like we talked about it earlier. It's like that guy. He's not good either. So you're basically bringing somebody else in. You're throwing a couple draft picks around. Carson Wentz. It's got to be name cachet. It's like we can get him back to where he was. We did. You saw what we did with Sam Darnold last year, right? Yeah, we bring Carson Wentz in. We get into a spot. Maybe we can turn him around as well. I don't know. I don't see any winners in this scenario, to be honest.
Yeah, and Tanner McKee's thumb injury may be a little bit more than the Eagles are kind of letting on in order for them to make this deal for Sam Howell. Actually, in all actuality, they do have Jalen Hurts, and he's been very durable. But it's just one hit away, man, and one of these other guys got to come in there. They're going to be in a lot of trouble. So yeah, that was just an odd situation. And I thought of all quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, but maybe he learned from his time underneath Mahomes, But yeah, I agree with you, shaking your head. I totally agree with you. What did he learn? He didn't learn it. He didn't learn how to slide, and it took his career arc in a whole nother direction. It did not slide at the goal line. Got hit by the Rams in that 2017 season, and he just was never the same after tearing his knee up. All Eagles fans always say, "Well, he's almost MVP." Yeah, well, he's almost MVP, but he wasn't. So, you know, but he's back. He's getting another paycheck. I mean, the guy knows how to get paid. He must have talked to Sam Bradford when they were together. So, because he was one of those guys who always bounced back on his feet. Speaking of quarterbacks and situation, the carousel in Indianapolis finally stopped, and Daniel Jones will be the Week 1 starter. So if you got your fantasy drafts, go ahead and grab him if you want. And Anthony Richardson and gets benched, and Anthony Richardson is looking like his career is going towards the Jamarcus Russell arc. It's like they're trying to find landing spots for him. He hasn't been cut, but it's not looking good for him.
No, it's not. It's we all thought anyway that Daniel Jones would be the starting quarterback. We just thought it'd be somewhere around mid-October, just for the fact where Richardson was drafted. You figured he'd get more of a little bit of a look. We were talking about earlier how guys would just hang on to these high draft picks because they didn't want to admit they were wrong. I think we're starting to see also a turn in the fact with, say, Kenny Two Gloves Pickett, you say Anthony Richardson, where guys who were drafted high, teams are just like, look, it's not happening. This was a bad pick. Let's move forward right now. So I give some of these teams credit for doing that. Richardson's outlook for the future, if I'm shaking the magic eight ball, it doesn't look so good.
Yeah, and Kevin, the thing is, Carly Gordon Ursay is taking over the team because her father passed away, and I just feel like she's kind of maybe going to tear this thing down and build it back up because Shane Steichen is on a hot seat there, and we'll get to all the head coaches on hot seat in a minute. And then Chris Ballard, the GM, and you're right, they put a lot into Anthony Richardson, 2023 first rounder, number 4 overall, and for them to say, okay, we'll sign Daniel Jones, and he's a free agent, give him a chance, but they do have a they have some talent on that team. Jonathan Taylor, and still have a pretty good offensive line. Pittman is finally seems like he's healthy a little bit. I know Downs is banged up. They have Ty Warren coming over from Penn State at tight end, so a lot of people are excited about them. And their defense is sneaky good. And as always, the AFC South is a division. It's kind of wide open. So Indianapolis, they're going to host Miami. They have Denver at Tennessee, at the Rams, and then the Raiders. So they only have one team that made two teams that made the playoffs there, but they all seem winnable games to me. You know what I mean? So we'll see what Daniel Jones could do. Obviously, as guys that kind of watched the Eagles over the years, we've seen Daniel Jones play good and very bad at times in NFC East in the past for the Giants. But he's going to get his opportunity. We'll see how that goes. The only other one, we talked about Cleveland already, settle on Joe Flacco. The Saints. The Saints are a mess, number one. Let's start there. So Spencer Rattler, he's kind of, he hung around. He didn't throw for any touchdown passes this past weekend and threw some nice balls here and there. But it seems like it's going to be Rattler over Tyler Shook. I mean, the Saints have a prayer.
Not at all, and they don't want one. They don't want anybody praying for them. They want to lose. Arch Manning must happen. That's got to happen for that franchise to turn things around. So, no, they don't want to win. And the one guy I feel bad for that seems to have a little more talent on that team is Chris Olave. Chris Olave, this is a wasted season in that guy's career right now. I think Kamara's okay getting paid. I don't think he's that complaining about it. But Chris Olave, it's like, dude, they're just putting him on ice for a season until next year.
Yeah, and hopefully he can stay healthy. And Olave had the concussion issues, but he's a big time talent. He played with Abeka and all those great receivers, Ohio State. Marvin Harrison Jr. So yeah, not a lot to get excited about for the Saints. But you talk about Arch Manning. An interesting thing is Arch Manning getting about 6.5 million in NIL money at Texas, and his grandpop Archie's talking tough. He's saying, well, he's probably going to stay another year. You know, is there any way he's going to stay at school when you just saw Cam Ward get $48 million guaranteed from Tennessee Titans this year as #1 overall pick?
No, that kid's gone. He's not hanging out for that. I mean, they're literally, if he has a somewhat decent season, which we all assume because he would be the #1 pick. So if he's a talent in the college level, what's there left to prove for a second year after that, or his third year, I should say, after that? There's no reason for him to hang around at that point. And I think it's one of those things they're putting it out there just in case the wrong team ends up at #1. It's like, where he's not for certain he's going to come out. They want their landing spot because remember Eli. They didn't want Eli playing for the Chargers, and when they worked their way to New York for that one. So they're definitely doing the same thing with Arch Manning.
Could that be crazy? History repeating itself, and they have that enough cachet that they can do that. Dion and Shador were talking about trying to control the narrative. Yeah, you saw how that worked out, but the Mannings are NFL royalty, and if anybody could pull off another "I'm not going there, trade me" type situation, they could do it. But I do think if Arch Manning wins a Heisman or gets his team pretty far in the playoffs, um, he's not coming back to school. So we're here talking everything National Football League, wrapping up the preseason here in Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coastal Sports Digital Network. Here with Kevin Midgette, and there's a lot of coaches under pressure. So we're going to talk about some of the coaches on the hot seat, and we'll kind of I'm going to spell out why I think they're on the hot seat, and you can kind of like yes or no. So the first one is got to be Zach Taylor. Joe Burrow had one of those seasons for the ages last year, But the thing is, Burrow has started 1-9 in weeks 1 and 2 in his career as a starter. 0-3 in 2019 and 0-3 2024. We talked about the alleged cheapness of Mike Brown. He probably don't want to play two coaches at once. But is Zach Taylor on a hot seat? He made the Super Bowl in 2021. That seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, it has been a long time, and to be honest. You have a roster also that's starting to get older too. Some of these offensive weapons, mind you, they ain't close to being done. No, but at a certain point, you got to realize that maybe he's not the guy who can get the job done. Then they'll start going name hunting, maybe. But once again, that cuts into their frugal wallet, so I don't even know if they'll do that. But I think he needs to at least get to a championship game this year. If he doesn't lose a close game in the championship game or go further, I think he's gone.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. He's on a hot seat, and I talked to a lot of guys around the league, and this next guy seems like one of the hottest seats in the National Football League. It's Mike McDaniel with the Miami Dolphins. There's just so many you know, things off kilter with the Dolphins right now, particularly Tua with the concussions. He only played 11 games last year. McDaniel's been a coach since 2022, but the owner, Mr. Ross, is 85 years old. He's getting impatient. They were 9-8 in 2022, 11-6 in 2023. Their big season with him. Last year, 8-9. But the thing is with Mike McDaniel, 3-14 versus winning teams. So, is he have a prayer, or what are you thinking in terms of Miami? Time for a change?
I think this is a busted season for the Dolphins, to be honest. I don't know where Tyreek Hill's mind's at this point. I don't know if he's really 100% invested in everything. The injuries with Tua as well, it's going to rear its head at some point. You know it will. A-Chain's already banged up a little bit. So going forward with your offense, yeah, I think this is a lost season for Miami.
Yeah, I agree with you that Mike McDaniel, if this team doesn't improve and get off to a quick start, he could be in trouble. So Miami at Indianapolis, New England in week 2. That's a big divisional game for them because you got two teams. They both are kind of one going in opposite directions in my opinion. Then at Buffalo, Jets at Carolina. So some winnable games there, but um, with that offense, kind of you're like, okay, got a lot of pieces, shiny new toys, but it's like taking out a sports car in the winter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how good are they going to be? Especially and Chan with that calf injury, it's just like it's been lingering. I know Ollie Gordon's played well in the preseason, but as I was saying, he is a rookie, so somebody maybe to keep your eye on the waiver wire, Ollie Gordon, but counting on him in the regular season, I'm just not sure of it yet. Next coach is, and I know I talk often with Rich Q on his show, Brian Daboll in the New York Giants. I mean, head coach since 2022, 9-7, 9-7-1 in 2022, where they made the playoffs, and then they gave Daniel Jones his contract. I mean, I looked at that, I was like, wow, that's not a very good record. 6-11, 2023. 3-14 in 2024, and they lose Saquon Barkley and the mess there with the Mara. So Dayball, 18-32-1 record. Is there any chance he's coming back? I mean, I'm surprised he came back this season for the Giants.
I have no idea how he has a job right now with that record right there. Now let's run it back one more year. Yeah, you know what? Let me get that really old quarterback too. Let me bring him over as well. And I don't know what they're doing over there. Once again, as Eagle fans could attest, I mean, it's like the Cowboys. It's like they're happy, just keep everyone there. They're doing the right things, but at the same time, I don't get how you think you can turn that around and win with what you have there.
Yeah, and there's only two bright spots for the Giants, for them really. You have Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors, who could be a combo going forward. But other than that, they've invested heavily in a defensive line, which is cool, but that's kind of spare part. You know what I mean? In terms of their offensive line, it's always been a mess. And I just think, yeah, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, the general manager, they're definitely on hot seat, and it could go wrong very quickly for the Giants. They're at Washington, at Dallas. They have Kansas City, the Chargers, at New Orleans, Philadelphia, at Denver, and then again at Philadelphia in Week 8. So Jackson Dart may be coming sooner than later. You talked about Russell Wilson out there, and I heard Jameis Crablegs is probably going to make the team, and Tommy DeVito is going to be cut or traded or something like that. But Jackson Dart's the future. They're going to get him out there. Eventually, maybe they could lean on, say, okay, don't get rid of us. We have a future with this kid, but it's just not looking good for Brian Daboll. The other coach, and you may be like, really, Lloyd? But in today's NFL, guys are one and done all the time. So Brian Schottenheimer with the Dallas Cowboys, we talked about Jerry Jones, and this whole what is he doing type thing, and can Steven rein in his father? Is Brian Schottenheimer on the hot seat?
Yeah, there's no doubt he is. I think the only reason they ended up with him, to be honest, because they got themselves into a position where it's like, well, we need a head coach, and this is starting to get away from us right now. Let's bring in a name that we recognize. Let's bring in a Schottenheimer, and so they have him in there. And with the money that they're paying for this team, the players that they have, the high priced toys, if they don't produce, someone's got to take the fall for it. And it's not going to be Jerry. It's not going to be Jerry's son. So who's that leave? So yeah, I could easily see him being a one and done.
Yeah, and the big thing too, Kevin, is you have two veteran, and I mean veteran guys out there. They've been winners their whole career. You got Belichick at the University of North Carolina, and then you have Nick Saban, who's kind of always hinted that he wanted another bite at the apple in the NFL after his failure with the Miami Dolphins. So Jerry being Jerry, and we talk about shiny new toys, and he's got the most expensive team in the National Football League. They make the most, money off the field and everything. I could see him saying, you know what, let me bring in that name head coach, which definitely could force Brian Schottenheimer to cut to the side.
Yeah, I can see it as well, but also I believe the last time he really did that was when Parcells was there, and Parcells didn't want to hear of any Jerry's mouth. So I think Jerry's got that point. He's like, I don't want to sit there and get clapback from Belichick or Saban at the same time. Jerry's ego is too big for that, I think, and that's probably his greatest downfall.
Yeah, and that's why he kept Jason Garrett around for so many years, because Garrett did what he told him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's going to be interesting in Dallas, and the soap opera with them, and Micah Parsons. We talked about that earlier, but they start. They're at Philadelphia, huge national game, national spotlight. Obviously, they would love to spoil the Eagles' banner raising, but I don't see that happening. And then they have the Giants at Chicago, Green Bay, and then at the Jets and at Carolina. So winnable games, and we know the Cowboys, if they can pad their stats against the Giants and Carolina and the Jets, they're going to be thumping their chest. But it's I just don't see this thing ending well for them. The defense just does not have enough teeth. You wonder about the running game with Javonte Williams. Other than CD Lamb, is there anybody worth taking on Dallas in fantasy football circles?
I'd throw a dart at Pickens maybe if you got towards it. You needed like your third, fourth, not even third, maybe your fourth receiver or something like that. But he's a malcontent also. Plenty of talent. There's no doubt about it for Pittsburgh to let him go. I mean, Pittsburgh could have had DK Metcalf and Pickens on the same team, but Pickens became such a trouble spot for them that it's like, all right, let's move him. Pickens maybe, Ferguson not so much. Actually, Blue at running back with your last pick in a fantasy draft, I would take him. I didn't do it, but I would do it.
Yeah, I think he's on my watch list, and it's something you're like, all right, well, they got to get the ball to somebody, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, and Dallas typically have a good offensive line that's a balling group, and maybe they'll find a way to run the football effectively. So we're still talking coaches on a hot seat here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football, 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We talked about this team earlier, and I think when you take this job, you just take it just like, all right, there's only 32 of them. Let me just take this job. And we talked about their ugly situation, but Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, been there since 2020, records 40 and 44. Surprisingly, he's made the playoffs twice, once with Flacco before. But I think I know your answer, but what do you think about Stefanski?
The Cleveland Browns are the type of NFL franchise that makes you want to go back to college afterwards. It's like, I'm just tired and sick of all this stuff. Let me get a college gig right now. Let me refocus, reset the battery a little bit. To think about it, like you said, he's made the playoffs 2 times with the Cleveland Browns. That right there should get you Coach of the Year votes. That right there, that he should at least be paroled from that franchise. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's almost like you're right. There's 32 jobs. I'll take it, but at the same time, can you put me out of my misery? It's like I'm just swimming upstream here for all these years.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You look at Cleveland, and they always show that famous Week One starter shirt, with all the different names on there: Brady Quinn and Spurgeon Wynn, and I go on and on. But it's just like, man, they just don't get it right. And I always talk to Nate about this. I was like, yeah, they're one of the franchises that never made a Super Bowl, along with the Lions and some of these other expansion teams, Carolina and Jacksonville and the Texans. But they're always just going to be the Browns, man. They're going to find a way not to get it done. It must have something to do with that Ernest Biner fumble, right when they were about to, beat Elway. I mean, and I was on with Rich earlier today, and there was a Cleveland fan, and he was, what should Cleveland get excited about? Is there anything to get excited about on a team? Jerry Judy, is he going to put up fantasy football stats again?
Uh, I tell you what, he hung some numbers when Jameis Winston was there because Jameis Winston would just air it out. Cleveland, I mean, you have Tillman there as well. Ford at running backs. Judkins, if he ever gets his stuff together. No. I'm telling you what, if you look at my fantasy team, I don't have one Cleveland Brown and New Orleans Saint on it. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I don't blame him. And in terms of Judkins, second round draft pick from Ohio State, uh, was not charged in Florida, but the NFL clearly is looking at this because the police report wasn't still pretty, and I think he's going to be suspended. Um, what should they do about Quinshawn Junkins?
It goes to the legality of it. The fact is, the charges aren't there. They're not. He's not guilty of that. But the NFL does their due diligence. He's looking at 4. I think I'd be surprised, and maybe they whittle it down to 3. But he's definitely missing time.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is he hasn't been in training camp. He possibly have that soft tissue injury, like you were saying, if he comes back, and what kind of shape he's been in, because he hasn't even been with the team, So yeah, just a mess. I mean, and as I was saying to Rich earlier, and you and I were talking about, what is their plan? They just don't have one. They're just kind of like just throwing stuff against the wall, and I always thought Andrew Barry was a good general manager. I mean, he came from Philadelphia, trained underneath Howie Roseman, but it's just a mess there, and I know they got to work for somebody, but Jim Haslam's got to clean that thing up, and yeah, we'll just keep watching. I want to ask in terms, this head coach is on a hot seat, but it just came out, and I know you watch college football too. Michigan, they got some sanctions against them for their version of Spygate, uh, but some of the talking heads were saying Jim Harbaugh should be suspended from the National Football League. I mean, are we talking about apples and oranges here? I know they suspended Terrell Pryor way back in the day before he went to the Raiders because he got some tattoos at Ohio State. But I mean, what are we thinking here?
Jim Harbaugh, if he's indicated that he's done any of this, we don't know. But that being said, it's something that every coach has, not every coach, but coaches have done in the past. Pete Carroll, when the posse got hot, what's the matter? I want to leave USC. I'm going to go to the pros. John Calipari in the college basketball, what happened? The posse started getting hot. He'd bounce around from university to university, and they leave the university with the sanctions. And that's what's been going on since, the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, and I just think leave it be. I've never been a fan of the NCAA, and they've just been overkill in terms of stepping into the new century in sports. You know what I mean? It was always wink, wink, and certain guys got away with certain things, and other coaches they persecuted. So no, just leave it be. He's in the NFL now. He don't care about college football. He's not going back there. So don't suspend him for what happened back in the Michigan days. We'll talk about a few more Coach on the hot seat, and we'll close out the topic here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Shane Steichen, we talked about those 2022 Eagles coordinators that got head coaching jobs. Steichen, been since there with the Colts since 2023, have not made the playoffs. His record 17-17, 9-8 in 2023, 8-9 2024. But we talked about Carly Gordon Ursay taking over for her father, and the mess that was Anthony Richardson that Shane Steichen attached himself to. Is he going to survive this season?
It's pretty sad to say that your whole livelihood for your career depends on Daniel Jones. It's like, oh man, I don't know if I'm unpacking the whole box for my office. I might leave some of the stuff in the box just for easy transition. Once again, yeah, he's done what he's done with that franchise, and once again with the ownership changeover a little bit. If he doesn't, I mean, it's a weaker division too. We've talked about that. So the fact he hasn't done more in a weaker division, if he doesn't turn it around a little bit, yeah, they're ready to move forward, I think.
Yeah, I think they will. I think Carly Ursay's looking to tear that thing down, and the team's got to perform. You know what I mean? And yeah, Daniel Jones, like, ooh, maybe you should just hand the ball off to Taylor and just see how it goes. I think that defense has still got some teeth too. So Steichen's former co-coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles, Jonathan Gannon, and this is a Nate Vance special. He's been talking about the Arizona Cardinals forever. This is their year. So you watch out for them. Well, Jonathan Gannon has been there since 2023. Record of 12-22. So 4-13 in 2023. 8-9 last season. I mean, is he going to save his job? And are we not going to keep picking on Nate about his Cardinals?
The whole thing with the Cardinals is there is some talent there. It's not like they're sitting there, they're totally inept like some of these other franchises. They just, if their quarterback can't get him over it, and I know that's going to hurt Nate's little heart there with Kyler Murray, I know. But at the same time, it's you have weapons there now. There's nobody running away with that division. You have an older Rams team now. Your quarterback is starting quarterback for them is already banged up going into the season. You have a Seattle team that's in transition right now. You don't know what you're going to get out of them. And you also have San Francisco that's dealing with their own things. So that's on them. If Gannon can't get anything moving with that franchise, he's another one that's probably going to be on his way out.
Yeah, and we know every year there's about 7 coaches that change jobs. So yeah, I definitely agree with you, Gannon. And his calling card all along, you know, was defense with the Eagles. He came back that defense in 2022. We're good in the regular season. Of course, they couldn't get done in the Super Bowl where Andy Reid ran the same play twice to score on Gannon. But now he has Sweat over there from the Eagles and Buda Baker. So maybe that defense will have some more teeth. But that division's kind of wide open. Speaking of NFC West, Stafford had his back injury, getting an epidural. He's 37 years old. I mean, it's getting old quick, and the season's coming before you know it. They host the Houston Texans in a 425 game in week 1. Is Stafford going to make it, or is this something people should be getting their Jimmy G jerseys out?
Jimmy G is going to play at some point this year. You hardly, I will say, you never really see a quarterback of that age with that type of injury that's going to sit there and play 17 games. There's no way. It's just physically not going to happen. So Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play at some point, and it might be the reason why some of us, not mentioning any names, stayed away from Puka Nacua in their fantasy football draft, because I don't know if Jimmy G can continually feed him the ball.
Yeah, and Kevin, it's funny because I had the choice between Bijan Robinson or Puka Nacua, who I'm a huge fan of his. I always thought, big playmaker, done a lot of good things in a short career, but yeah, I decided not to take him either because that injury and the age of the quarterback, you just don't know what's going on. Their offensive line has kind of been in disarray since Whitworth retired so many years ago, and you just don't know how many games that Matthew Stafford's going to play. The Rams, as I said, Houston, at Tennessee, at Philadelphia in a rematch from the divisional round last year, Indianapolis, San Francisco, at Baltimore, at Jacksonville, and they finally have their bye in week 8. So, some winnable games, some home games in there. But if they don't have their quarterback and they're relying on Jimmy G, they're going to be in trouble because you know what you're going to get with Garoppolo. He's kind of a ride along guy. Yes, they have Kyron Williams, but I can't wait to see Devontae Adams, who's now there. Once Jimmy G misses, he's known to be off target. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You saw it in the Super Bowl. He led the Niners to. This is a situation where it could blow up real quick for the Rams and a team that won a division last year, but they won it on tiebreakers, and maybe Seattle will still be there. So, going to be interesting there. Another coach on a hot seat, and it's year two, and he's got a rookie quarterback. So you're like, all right, give the guy some grace. But Brian Callahan with the Tennessee Titans, 3-14 last season. Cam Ward's coming over. Are they going to be able to turn this thing around and save his job? Cam Ward got in a fight with Simmons on a D line the other day, um, and he seems like the most least talked about number one overall in some time.
You wanted Callahan to have that 3-14 record. You know why? Because you wanted the number one pick. You needed that franchise quarterback. So I don't even know if the franchise would be even mad that for that season. You got Cam Ward as your number one pick. Not the most ballyhooed number one pick we've ever seen, that's for sure. And there's times in preseason where it looks like he's definitely not ready. The thing is, if you're the Titans, how many wins decides what a good season is. If the Titans win, I would say 6 games. That would be a fantastic season for them, I think, this year. You want to see the growth with Cam Ward and that Callahan's contributing to it. If he doesn't show that, that Ward's actually progressing as the season goes on, yeah, he's out the door.
Yeah, and they got rid of Rand Carthon, the GM, last season, and replaced him. Amy Adams Strunk taking over the team from her late father. Um, we'll see. And the thing is, Tennessee's a small market. Not it's not a national story. I think that's why a lot of people are saying, "Oh yeah, that's right. Cam Ward was the number one overall pick," and we'll see what he does for them. I know they're trying to get a new stadium situation closed out there. Titans are at Denver, have the Rams, Colts, at Houston, at Arizona, at Las Vegas, and the Patriots. So kind of a last place schedule there. So they'll have their opportunities, but this is another team. You being our resident fantasy football guy, is there anybody to really get excited about there? I mean, it seems like Tony Pollard is going to get his touches because Tajay Spears has a high ankle, and he's going to probably go on IR to start the season.
Once again, I do not have any Tennessee Titans on my roster. I know people that like Calvin Ridley still. That being said, Cam Ward's going to be the guy who has to get him the ball, and can he get him the ball enough to make him, worth having around?
Yeah, and that's the majority of the coaches. But there's a few other ones, and everybody's like, well, you got to talk about this guy, Lloyd, in terms of hot seat. Mike Tomlin, no playoff wins since the 2016 season. But I always tell everybody, it's Pittsburgh. Never had a losing season. They don't like changing coaches. We know that Bill Cowher struggled at a certain point in his career, and he finally won a Super Bowl. Again, and Tomlin's already got a Super Bowl in his back pocket. But is he on a hot seat? And when you look at the Steelers, they're very old and aging. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, 41, Cam Hayward, 36, and you know, even Watts, 30. So what are we thinking in terms of Steelers?
I will die on that hill that says Mike Tomlin did one of his better coaching jobs ever last season. I think the way he handled the team that he had to get them into a position over 500, I thought he did a great job with that team. Now, also, I know a lot of people that are Steelers fans, and there's a bunch of them that want to get rid of Mike Tomlin. And my question back is, who are you bringing in? Who are you going to bring in? You can't get rid of a guy just to get rid of a guy. Who are you bringing in that's going to bring you what Mike Tomlin's brought you over his tenure? And none of them have an answer. So I think Tomlin stays.
Yeah, I think he does. And Omar Khan, the GM there, they're both entrenched. They're Steelers way. I mean, he's been there since like 2007. So, he's been there a very long time. And he was a young guy when he came there. So, it got a lot of wins. And yeah, the Steelers way is not to get rid of a head coach, even if he's doing so well. And the interesting and taking it to a fantasy thing is Caleb Jones, the running back coming from Iowa. What should we expect from him? They have Warren, who I've always thought was underrated, DK Metcalf, and are they going to be able to work out this thing with Jonnu Smith at tight end with Fryermuth?
I think Fryermuth's going to be that lean on guy. I think Johnny Smith, I think he had a great season last year, but I don't see him, replicating it this year. DK Metcalf, I can see him getting frustrated because Aaron Rodgers, once again, does not like to throw the pick. He doesn't like throwing the ball up there. So he'll throw it away, and that's going to make DK Metcalf very angry because he wants to win those 50-50 balls. Put it up there, let me get it. With his speed and his agility, he can do that. But Aaron Rodgers isn't that guy. So there's nobody on Pittsburgh I would touch right now. But I'm with you on the running backs. I actually kind of like both of them. We just don't know who's going to get the ball. That's the whole problem.
Yeah, and now offensive line's kind of a question mark. You have Broderick Jones at the tackle position's kind of struggled, and then with Salomalu coming over for the Eagles, he's kind of been banged up and a question mark. So it's just like, all right, you're not sure what the Steelers are going to get, and that's a tough division. I mean, we talked about the Bengals earlier. Yes, the coach is on a hot seat, but they have so many offensive weapons, and they're going to get into shooting matches. The Steelers obviously want to play their style. They want to run the football with Warren and Jones. We'll see if they're able to dictate the pace of the game. Rodgers, he looked good on paper for the Jets. I mean, he didn't throw a lot of interceptions, you said. He had over 25 touchdowns. But to me, that arm strength and decision making is just not where it needs to be. Is he a guy, should they be thinking, okay, Mason Rudolph, get him ready in the bullpen?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Aaron Rodgers is going to be that guy. Once again, I think Tomlin stays. Aaron Rodgers is the guy who's going to make him finish under 500 for the first time.
Yeah, and I know we talked about, and we'll get to our predictions next week, but yeah, when we did our divisional preview, I was like, yeah, I think this is the first season that the Steelers are going to have a losing record. The Vegas was looking at over under of 7.5. So it kind of shows you, okay, they're leaning towards them not making it either. And it's like, I know I got a lot of Steelers fans, and then like they were the team growing up, the 70s and 80s. All of those guys are big Steelers fans, and but it's tough times there. And how long are you going to lean on the history of all those guys being in the Hall of Fame? Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris. I mean, those days are long gone. I mean, we talked about the last playoff win, 2016. I think a lot of people are getting frustrated by that, but they still do have T.J. Watt and that defense. I didn't like that trade though for Minka Fitzpatrick, sending him away. Is Jalen Ramsey going to fit in with the Steelers?
Jalen Ramsey just seems to be at that point in his career that he's not Jalen Ramsey anymore. He's a name. I don't think, you're getting Jalen Ramsey light at this point, much like I think you're getting Darius Slay light as well.
Yeah, and then, yeah, Slay coming over from the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles stepped away from him for a reason. I mean, he was having some difficulty in coverage, and Q Mitchell was taking the main receiver last year. And yes, they had enough to win the Super Bowl, but they were clearly looking to the future, and they were like, all right, Slay, go ahead. And he was making too much money, and the Steelers took him. Joey Porter Jr. is at the other corner for them, and as long as they get defensive pressure, I think they'll be okay in terms of that secondary. But I think they're going to miss Minka Fitzpatrick, and it could be a season where, yeah, they do have a first losing one there in Pittsburgh. This one was interesting, and somebody brought this up, one of my emailers, Matt from West Palm. He was saying Raheem Morris on a hot seat with the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons, everybody's talking about them to make that leap this year. They're talking about London stepping forward and Bijan Robinson and the offensive line finally coming together. But Raheem Morris last season, 8-9. Is he on a hot seat? And what are we thinking about the Falcons?
No, I don't think he is on the hot seat, to be honest. I think you got Penix Jr. to start the season. And it's once again, it's another situation like with Cam Ward. You want to see how they develop as the season goes on. If he seems like he has Michael Penix Jr. going in the right direction, he's fine. If Penix Jr. never really gets moving, and then you have that Kirk Cousins contract on top of it and everything else, now you got a problem. So it's all in the quarterback development, I think.
And a big thing I wanted to talk to you about in terms Kirk Cousins. Somebody was saying to me, well, the Raiders lose Aiden O'Connell to a thumb injury, and we talked about the Minnesota Vikings situation. Will somebody trade for Kirk Cousins, or and would it be the unthinkable? Do you think that the Falcons would cut him by tomorrow 4 p.m.? They'd be on the hook for a lot of money in terms of guarantees.
It'd be bold if they did it, that's for sure. That'd be another situation where a franchise is like, we made a mistake. But that being also, it's who I guess there would be teams that would want to pick up Kirk Cousins. There's no doubt about it. You know, quarterbacks, some of the guys starting the league right now aren't better than Kirk Cousins. But Kirk Cousins, would I want to bring him in? My quarterback, my starter has to be done for the season for me to bring Kirk Cousins in. So no, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and the trading deadline, I believe, is somewhere around November 1st. So we'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, you would think he'd be a trading piece. But the thing is about Kirk Cousins, we talked about it earlier with Sam Bradford. I mean, Kirk Cousins has made probably more money than most quarterbacks out of there. Someone combined, he made over $300 million in his career. The thing I always tell everybody is he's only had one playoff win. So, he puts up great stats. Yeah, fantasy, he may be a guy you want to look at, but I think his career's kind of winding down, and that's why Fontenot and the Falcons and Arthur Blank, they decided to go with Michael Penix Jr. What do you think about Michael Penix Jr. getting in all the fight and ruckus and an inter squad scrimmage? I was talking with Nate about it. He said, "Oh, you know, that's some good stuff. He's showing some fire." But I didn't think it was too smart.
Smart, no, but do I like it? Yes, I do. I like to see it. I want to see, especially when you're a young, up and coming guy. You want to see that fire in somebody. You want to, once again, you want to make sure they do it at the right time. You don't want to be like Shiloh Sanders, who wants to sit there and reach out to somebody, and next thing you know, he's on the streets. It's one of those you have to pick and choose, especially as a quarterback as well. You can't put yourself in harm's way. But yeah, I like to see the fire from him.
Yeah, and Shiloh Sanders, and yeah, we definitely got to talk. With cuts coming up, he was cut by Tampa Bay. All the teams are getting down from 90 to 53, and Shiloh Sanders was an undrafted free agent, and was a coverage liability at Colorado, and he had a problem with personal fouls in college, and I think having the Sanders name was good and bad. It helped him get him signed, but he also has a bullseye on himself in terms of, okay, you got to outperform what you did in college. Do you think he'll get another opportunity? Someone said that he's going to join the slap league. I don't know if you ever heard about that.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the slap league. I can't believe that's a thing, but yeah, I've watched some clips. If Shallow Sanders really wants to play, once again, we talked about there's a lot of leagues out there, and he just needs to play more. He just needs to play. He needs to work to get better, and I don't know if he has it in him to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, and a key thing with all these guys getting cut, teams can probably late tomorrow, um, which is Tuesday, early Wednesday, you'll start seeing them all signed. They can sign 16 players to the practice squad, 17 if you include the exemption for an international player. 10 of those spots have to be rookies or a guy with 2 years or less in the league. But the good thing is veterans can now be signed to that and kind of be a practice squad guy, practicing and be a taxi squad guy, they used to say back in the day, and maybe work their way up. But yeah, it's going to be some long faces around the league, and the Turks coming calling around the National Football League. And then we're talking about the real games, Kevin. And a big thing was last year, I went back and researched this. Teams that made the playoffs were 9-5 in week one. So you had Kansas City, Buffalo, Houston, Minnesota, LA, Chargers, Tampa Bay, Detroit all won. So how important is week one? I mean, everybody's saying, well, they almost using it as an extra preseason game, but just talk about the importance of week one.
Well, it gets your whole team off to the start that you want. The positivity flows. It's like, all right, we got week one, got the first win under our belt. You don't want to be a team that's picked maybe to go to the playoffs. You lose week one, next thing you know, you lose week two, and then you're like the Cincinnati Bengals are every September. Then all of a sudden you're in your own head. You're playing yourself and the other team now. So yeah, to get that first win off the blocks, oh, no doubt it's huge.
Yeah, and I agree with you because there were 9 teams that started 2-0. 7 of those teams made the playoffs. Now the crazy thing is, I'm going to test you. Who were 2 teams that started 2-0 last year and did not make the playoffs?
Is Dallas one of them?
No.
No, I'm just throwing stuff out here. Oh, let's go. Uh, oh man, I got nothing. Go. What do you got
All
for me?
right, and one of them you were like, oh, okay, makes sense. Seattle started 2-0, and then they kind of limped, 10-7. But this one I thought was crazy. The Saints started 2-0 last year. I mean, how in the world they won their first 2 games, and everybody I guess was excited about them. But yeah, and they didn't win many more. Would they win like 2 more the rest of the year? So
You know
it's
what that did? You know that killed everyone's suicide pools. I'm going to pick against the Saints for an easy win in the first week of the season. Oh, no, I'm out for the year. That's exactly what that did.
yeah, and it's funny because you say that because last year in my survivor pool, I like a lot of people, I picked Cincinnati over New England, and New England went to Cincinnati and won, which was like, oh man, are you kidding me? So yeah, so
No, that happened to me week 1 too. I was out for the year. I was like, that
oh, it
was
just
fun.
made it so
Yeah,
much
that was fun.
non-fun. You're like,
Uh-huh.
oh man, you're like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? But every once in a while, teams are not ready to go. I think that's why we saw, I went to the game where Cincinnati played against the Eagles in a preseason week 1, and they left their starters in, and they made sure they were looking sharp because they don't want to um, start 0-2. So I looked at this. There were 10 teams that started 0-2 last year, and only 3 of them made the playoffs. So 0-2 making the playoffs.
Not even going to guess. Don't even give
All
me.
right.
Don't even throw it to me. Not even going to
This
guess.
one was crazy because I was looking at this. The Ravens were one of them. You remember they had to win week 3 because you go on 3, your season's over. Uh, Denver,
Yeah.
and then the Rams. So that's going to be interesting to see if they can avoid these slow starts. But they were able to survive it. And then the rest of the teams that went 0-2, they did not make the playoffs. And it was Cincinnati, Tennessee, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Carolina, Cleveland, the Giants. I mean, they were really bad. So yeah, so that was just my little quiz, but it just shows you the importance of the first couple weeks of the season. And then next week's going to be fun because we got real games to preview. Obviously, I was saying we're going to do our predictions first, and then Kevin and I can laugh about it later on when we predict, who's going to. We're going to give a Super Bowl pick.
Yeah. Why not?
All right, so we'll and then Angel will record it, and everybody will be able to laugh when we say, "Oh, that was supposed to be that team." But next week's slate of games is interesting because you have um, week 1, September 4th, Dallas at Philadelphia, and then comes right around that Friday, Kansas City and the Chargers are in Brazil. That game's on YouTube. How do you like that? You
I
liking
hate
that?
it. I hate it so much. You can't believe how much I hate it.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And then finally on Sunday, which was always the official kickoff, um, bunch of great games. Already, I'm looking at my Survivor pool pick. I put it in. I'm going with the Broncos over the Tennessee Titans. They're hosting them in a 4 o'clock game. Is there one game you have that you're thinking of Survivor pick?
Not even looking at it yet. I like to go with a clean slate. I want to know who's healthy going into that weekend. Nope. I don't like to cloud my judgment.
All right. Well, next week I will make him make that pick for all his fans out there that living by his picks. I don't know why they would, but
I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it.
but
No.
another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, the Coast Sports Digital Network. Great job, Kevin. Great job, Angel Behind the Glass. I'm Lloyd Vance, and we will talk to you next week.